I still remember the silence inside the church that day. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence where people are waiting for something bad to happen. My grandfather had just passed away a week earlier, and the entire family gathered for his funeral. I stood at the back, wearing a simple black suit I could barely afford, watching everyone act like they cared. But I knew the truth. Most of them weren't there for him. They were there for what he left behind, and I was the only one who seemed to notice. My name is Ryan, and for most of my life, I was treated like I didn't matter in this family. Not successful enough, not loud enough, not important enough. But Grandpa, he was different. He never judged me. He just used to look at me and say, "You'll understand everything one day." At the time, I thought it was just something old people say. But standing at his funeral, I started feeling something was off. My relatives were whispering in corners, smirking, glancing at me like I didn't belong there. My uncle leaned toward my cousin and said something that made both of them laugh. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt them. They were laughing at me, and that was just the beginning. Because then my aunt walked past me and said quietly, "I hope you're not expecting anything from this." "Ryan," she smiled while saying it. That smile hit harder than a slap. I wanted to respond, but I stayed quiet. Because something inside me said, "Just wait." But I didn't know what I was waiting for. The ceremony continued, but I couldn't focus. My eyes kept drifting to the closed casket at the front. Grandpa was gone, and with him, I thought maybe my only real support in this family was gone too. That's when I noticed something strange. The lawyer hadn't arrived yet, and that wasn't normal. My uncle kept checking his watch like he was impatient. My cousins were already talking about plans and next steps. Next steps for what? The house? The land? The money? I felt my stomach tighten, because suddenly I realized this funeral wasn't just about saying goodbye. It was about waiting for something to be opened. And when the lawyer finally walked through those doors, everything in my life was about to change. But I didn't know that yet, not even close. And what happened next would silence the entire room. The moment the lawyer finally walked in, the entire room shifted. It was like someone had turned the temperature colder. He wasn't in a hurry. Calm steps, clean suit, thick file in his hand. And instantly I noticed something else. Everyone straightened their posture, even the ones who were just laughing a few minutes ago. My uncle whispered, "Finally." That one word told me everything. They weren't grieving. They were waiting for instructions. The lawyer placed his briefcase down and looked around the room slowly. His eyes paused on each family member. Then for a second they stopped on me. Just a second, but it felt longer than the rest of the room combined. Then he spoke. "We are here for the reading of Mr. William Carter's last will and testament." A heavy silence followed. My cousins leaned forward immediately. My aunt crossed her arms like she was already confident. And me? I stayed at the back, invisible as always. The lawyer opened the file. But before he read anything, he said something strange. "There are instructions in this will that may surprise some of you." My uncle let out a small laugh. "Just get on with it," he said impatiently. And that's when I felt it again. That same feeling from earlier. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The lawyer began reading names. My uncle, my aunt, my cousins. Each of them got small things. Money, jewelry, a few assets. Every name made them more relaxed, more confident. They started smiling again, whispering again. Then my cousin leaned toward me and said quietly, "Looks like you're getting exactly what you deserve." He smiled. That word, deserve, it burned, because I hadn't even been mentioned yet. Not once. Minutes passed. The lawyer kept reading, and I was still invisible. That's when my aunt finally spoke loudly enough for others to hear. "Well, I guess some people just don't get anything in life." A few people chuckled. I felt my face get hot, but I still didn't react, because something in me kept saying, "Wait." Then the lawyer flipped another page, and everything changed. He paused, longer than before. The room went quiet again. My heart started beating faster. He adjusted his glasses and said, "Before I continue, there is a final beneficiary listed separately." My uncle leaned forward instantly. "Finally," he said under his breath. My cousin whispered, "Probably charity or something." They were smiling, confident, relaxed, and then the lawyer spoke the next sentence. And my entire world stopped. "To Ryan Carter." The room froze. I swear even the air stopped moving. Every single head turned toward me at once. My aunt's smile disappeared instantly. My uncle blinked like he didn't hear correctly. My cousin literally whispered, "What?" The lawyer continued, calm as ever. "All remaining assets, including the primary residence, business holdings, and confidential investments, are transferred in full to Ryan Carter." My ears started ringing. I couldn't process it. Me? Everything? But that wasn't even the worst part, because the lawyer was just getting started, and the next sentence would destroy every illusion my family had left. The room didn't just go quiet after that line. It collapsed into silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like it has weight. My uncle was the first to react. "That's impossible," he said sharply. "There must be a mistake." The lawyer didn't even look at him. He just turned another page. "No mistake," he said calmly. "It is clearly written and legally verified." My aunt let out a nervous laugh. "Ryan, no, that doesn't make sense. He was never involved in anything." That word again, never. Like I had never existed in this family except as background noise. My cousins started whispering fast. Now. Confused, angry, panicking, and I was still standing there, completely frozen, because I couldn't understand it either. Grandpa left everything to me? Everything? The house, the business, the money, all of it, but why? I barely spoke to him in his last few months. He had been sick, quiet, distant, or at least, that's what I thought. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There is also a sealed letter attached by Mr. William Carter. It is addressed specifically to Ryan Carter." My breath stopped again. "A letter? For me?" He handed it to me directly. My hand shook as I took it. And the room, the entire room, was watching me now. Not laughing anymore. Not mocking, just watching. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single handwritten page. Grandpa's handwriting. My heart started pounding as I read the first line. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. "I know what they did to you." I stopped breathing. My eyes moved faster. "They think I never noticed how they treated you, how they excluded you, how they stole from you." My blood went cold. "Stole from me?" I looked up for a second. My uncle's face had changed completely. The confidence was gone. My aunt wasn't smiling anymore. And my cousins looked uncomfortable for the first time in their lives. I went back to the letter. I stayed quiet because I needed proof. My hands started shaking harder. "Your family believed I was unaware, but I was not. I documented everything." "Documented everything?" That's when the lawyer spoke again. "There are additional sealed records. Mr. Carter instructed us to open only after his passing." He placed another folder on the table. Thicker, heavier. And suddenly I realized this wasn't just a will. This was something else. A plan, a trap, the lawyer continued. Bank transfers, property manipulation, unauthorized signatures, all connected to multiple family members present here. My uncle stood up immediately. "That's a lie." But his voice cracked. The lawyer didn't stop. "And recordings of conversations confirming coercion and financial abuse." The room exploded instantly. Whispers turned into chaos. My aunt shook her head fast. No, this is not true." But her voice was weaker now, and I just stood there, holding Grandpa's letter like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Because suddenly I understood. Grandpa hadn't just left me everything. He had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this exact moment. But what came next wasn't just about inheritance anymore. It was about justice, and my family was about to face every lie they thought was buried forever. The lawyer's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Order. If anyone interrupts again, I will have security remove them." That shut everyone up instantly. But the tension in the room, it didn't disappear. It just turned heavier. My uncle slowly sat back down, but his hands were clenched tightly. My aunt kept shaking her head like she could somehow undo what she just heard. And my cousins? They weren't laughing anymore. They looked scared. I was still holding the letter. Grandpa's words kept replaying in my mind. I documented everything. That wasn't just emotional writing. That was evidence. The lawyer opened the thick folder again. "This section," he said, "contains financial records showing systematic transfer of funds from Mr. William Carter's accounts without authorization." He looked up. "Signed under false authority." My stomach dropped. My uncle immediately spoke again, but his voice wasn't strong anymore. "You can't prove that." The lawyer didn't even hesitate. "We already have." He placed a printed document on the table. Then another. And another. Each page felt like a hammer hitting the room. My aunt suddenly stood up. This is harassment. My father would never, the lawyer interrupted her calmly. Your father also left video testimony. That line changed everything. The room froze again. Video? My throat went dry. The lawyer turned his laptop toward the center table. I was instructed to play this only in case of dispute. He pressed play, and suddenly, Grandpa appeared on the screen. Weak, older, but completely aware. My heart stopped. It was really him. He looked directly into the camera and spoke slowly. If you are watching this, then I am gone. My aunt gasped. My uncle leaned forward, shaking his head. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Grandpa continued, I did not leave my wealth blindly. I watched what my family became when they thought I was weak. Silence hit the room like a wave. I saw how Ryan was treated, ignored, used, disrespected. My chest tightened. I didn't even realize tears were forming in my eyes, because he saw it, all of it, even when I thought nobody did. On the video, Grandpa paused, then said something that made my entire body go cold. They believed I was unaware of their actions. But I was never unaware. The lawyer paused the video. The room was completely silent again. Then he continued speaking. All assets were legally transferred under conditions of moral trust violation. Any attempt to contest the will trigger full public disclosure of all recorded evidence. My uncle whispered, public disclosure. That's when it hit them. This wasn't just inheritance. This was exposure. My aunt slowly sat back down, her face pale now. My cousins looked down at the floor. And I just stood there, still holding that letter, feeling like the ground under me had changed forever. But the final blow hadn't come yet. The lawyer looked directly at my family and said, There is one final instruction from Mr. Carter. He paused, long enough to make everyone uncomfortable again. Then he said, Ryan Carter has full authority to decide what happens next. Every head turned toward me again. But this time, it wasn't mockery. It was fear, and I realized something terrifying. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being judged. I was the one holding the power. The room felt different now. Not loud, not chaotic. Just trapped. Every single person in that church was waiting for me to speak. My uncle wouldn't even look at me anymore. My aunt kept rubbing her hands together, nervously like she was trying to calm herself down. My cousins were frozen in their seats. And me? I still couldn't fully believe it. Just hours ago, I was nobody in their eyes. And now I was holding control over everything Grandpa built. The lawyer spoke softly. Mr. Ryan Carter, the instructions require your decision before we proceed with asset transfer execution. I swallowed hard. My voice felt strange when I finally spoke. What are my options? The lawyer nodded and opened the final section of the file. Option 1, full transfer as written, with immediate ownership and no conditions. He paused. Option 2, initiate legal review of all evidence for fraud prosecution against implicated family members. The room reacted instantly. My aunt gasped. My uncle finally looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, real fear, because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about consequences. I looked down at Grandpa's letter again. My hands were still shaking. He had written one last line at the bottom. I gave you this not for revenge, but so truth would no longer be buried. That hit me harder than anything else. Revenge. It sounded powerful, but sitting there, I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. Years of being ignored, humiliated, pushed aside. All of it came back at once. The lawyer broke the silence. Mr. Carter, your decision? I looked up slowly. Every face in the room was watching. Me, waiting, and I realized something important. They weren't afraid of losing money. They were afraid of being seen for who they really were. I took a breath, and I said the words that made the entire room hold its breath. I don't want revenge. A confused murmur spread instantly. My uncle blinked. My aunt looked surprised. I continued. But I also won't pretend nothing happened. Silence again. I turned slightly toward the lawyer. Proceed with the full transfer. Then I looked at my family. My grandfather saw everything, and I won't disrespect his decision. My voice got steadier, but from this moment on, I am done being treated like I don't exist. The room didn't respond. No one laughed anymore. No one interrupted. Because they understood. Everything had changed permanently. The lawyer nodded. Understood. The transfer will be executed immediately. And just like that, Years of disrespect ended in one sentence. As people slowly began leaving the church, no one spoke to each other. No celebration. No arguments. Just silence. My uncle walked past me without a word. My aunt avoided eye contact completely. My cousins followed quietly behind them. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. Outside the church, the air felt different. Lighter. Calmer. I stood there alone for a moment, holding Grandpa's letter, and I finally understood what he had really given me. Not just wealth, not just property, but truth and closure. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the lawyer. Everything is now legally under your name. I looked up at the sky and whispered quietly, "Thank you, Grandpa." Because in the end, he didn't just change my life. He ended a cycle and started a new one